um just the simplicity of being, that there comes a point where you see the mind always trying to do something, wanting to do this or that. And if it feels like you're tired of all these practices, the simplicity is just simply dropping all of that activity and just simply being. And this is what you get a taste of on the guidance, is just, it's the cessation of what you're used to, always reflecting on a past, projecting a future, and engaging in this story, identifying with the narrative of the mind. And all that feels like effort. It feels like trying to get somewhere, trying to hold on to something. So it's just it's an invitation to just put all that down, to not make any effort and just simply be as you are. Not trying to be this, not trying to be that. That there's just this nakedness. To the moment, a nakedness to yourself, and you're just simply being. So there's no describing things. There's no storytelling about the experience. There's just simply what is, without any interpretation. It's just simply a cessation of doing, but that doesn't mean that you're forcing anything. It's not like you're trying to make effort to not label things or not interpret or not describe or not, there's no force. All of that is effort. So that's just simply what is coming to a rest. It's that activity. And it's that activity that creates this kind of filter on the moment. That filter of interpretation, the filter of story. So this being is just simply resting without any reference points. That just simply notice how you can just be without referencing to yourself, not creating this separation of I'm in here and that's out there, without this direction of this is me and that's the object, without any labeling. Just notice how you can look at walls or the room, but you don't need to label it as a room. You don't need to label it as walls or a TV. It's prior to that activity, that labeling, categorizing, dividing. All of that is an activity. The being is prior to all of that. So this is pointing you to the experience of yourself. Of course, anything that we say about it is going to be words and description and labels. They're just simply this awareness of being. And the awareness is not separate from the being. There's just this aliveness. This knowingness of existing, not existing as a person, not existing as a body, not existing as a man or a woman. This aliveness is this existence. So it's essential. You can't remove this knowingness. You can't remove the awareness. You can't remove the aliveness. You can't remove that existence. That you're existing without past or future. You are existing without a name, a story. So when all of that activity has settled and come to rest, it's obvious what remains. Now, this being is not only present when that activity has come to a rest. It's not like you can only experience being when that activity has come to a rest. It's just obvious when it does come to a rest. Because that is all that remains. But if we are identified with that activity, then it's as if there's an overlooking of this being. It's as if there's an ignoring the being. And there's more emphasis on the doing, which is all the things that I listed at the start: the storytelling, the interpretation, the labeling, the categorizing. All of that activity is then valued more than the being. The activity is valued more than the rest. The doing is valued more than the being. So by allowing that activity to come to rest, well, there's the experience of rest. There's the experience of being. Without the doing, the activity is absent. But now I want you to see how being is ever present. That the activity starts and stops. It comes, it goes, it appears, it disappears. But being has no start or end. Being is not appearing or disappearing. Being is not coming or going. So in seeing the activity that is coming and going, appearing and disappearing, starting and stopping, changing, by seeing how that activity settles down and comes to a rest, and that which remains is being. This being is what you are. You then become familiar with yourself as being. But it's not one or the other. It may feel new, unfamiliar, unknown, and just allowing that activity to settle and come to rest makes it easier to experience the being that you are. So it may be easier to experience the being that you are in the absence of doing, the absence of activity. But I want you to see how it is ever present. What you are is ever present. That you can still experience the being that you are in the midst of activity. It's just that you're not overlooking that being that you are anymore. So then you're able to engage in activities but experience the rest, the peace. And then going one step further, we come to realize that that activity is actually made of being. The doing is made of being. So then you experience the true nature that you are. In the midst of any activity. Because the reality of the doing is the being that you are. So it's made of your true nature. So you start experiencing yourself, and to give it some labels, the happiness, the love, the peace, the freedom that you are, the wholeness, the completeness, the fulfillment that you are, you experience that as the activity, whatever it may be, driving or cooking dinner, cutting the grass, watching TV. That's what that activity is made of. So I just simply walked you through just 3 steps. And let's just use an analogy here. Let's say you're watching a movie and you're so immersed in the movie that you're overlooking the screen. All you're seeing is the content of the movie, the images, the activity. That's all you see. So by just simply doing absolutely nothing, and even better, closing your eyes, it's like we turn off the movie. No storytelling, no reference of past, no reference of future, no imagination, just simply being. You experience the absence of the images appearing. That activity of imaging has come to a stop. And it's obvious that there's the screen. The movie is off. So in this sense, it's getting familiar with the screen. And then the second step is, okay, well, don't forget about the screen. The screen doesn't disappear when we just press play and the movie comes back on. Just because the movie reappears doesn't mean that the screen has disappeared. The screen is ever present. It's still present during the movie. So now you are experiencing both the screen and the movie simultaneously. And then the third step is then realizing that the reality of the movie is the screen. that actually it's the screen that's appearing as the movie. That the movie doesn't have a separate existence apart from the screen. The screen exists without the movie, but the movie cannot exist without the screen. So I'm saying being is like the screen. At first, you are overlooking it, the being that you are. There's an identification with the activity and appearances. So then I say, well, let's just turn off the movie. Now there's the cessation of activity and appearances. What is it that remains when the movie is off? Well, it's the screen of being. Okay, movie goes back on. You turn it on. Now experience the being in the midst of the movie. That you can experience the being and the doing simultaneously. You can experience the screen and the movie simultaneously. So there's what feels like two. Something called being and something called doing. And then the third step is then realizing that the movie is actually made of the screen. The reality of the movie is the screen. That there's not actually two things. All there is the screen. So in seeing this, the being that you are is what's appearing as the activity that is appearing. So you are the reality of this activity that is appearing. The activity that is appearing is what you usually call life. You are the reality. That is experiencing itself. So with this realization, there's no referencing something called being and something called doing or something called rest and activity. There's no referencing. There's no emphasis on one or the other. There's no preference for one or the other. There's not two. There's just you.